also lead the Patient-Centered Measurement Methods Cluster of the BC Support Unit, which brings us here today, together with Lena Cuthbertson. And we're both very pleased to have this opportunity to share with you the results of priority themes and a call for proposals on advancing the science of patient-centered measurement. I'll let Lena introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lena Cuthbertson. I am the Executive Director of the BC Office of Patient-Centered Measurement and Improvement. And as Rick indicated, I am an advisor on the Patient-Centered Measurement Methods Cluster. And I'm delighted to be here today with Rick, as well as folks from the support unit, to share with you the priorities for our call for proposals.
So our focus today is to announce our Methods Cluster priority themes for advancing the science of patient-centered measurement in BC, and to issue a call for proposals that address our Methods Cluster priorities. We'll begin with a brief introduction on our PCM Methods Cluster, and we'll provide an overview of our extensive engagement activities so that you have that background. We'll then be part on the results of our engagement activities, which resulted in identifying priority themes. There's 11 priority themes, and we'll briefly describe each of those themes to you. And then we'll conclude with a discussion about the call for proposals, the specifics about that, and we really want to leave enough time for you to ask questions and answers. So please take a moment to write down your questions during our presentation. We'll just go through the presentation first and then answer questions afterwards. You can either ask those questions during the question and answer period, but it is, of course, possible that we can run out of time. So you could also email us those questions afterwards if you feel they weren't sufficiently answered. And we'll also be taking notes and be posting a question and answers document after this webinar, just to make sure that all your questions are answered. Next slide, there we go. So we'll begin with a brief introduction on our patient-centered measurement methods cluster and our stakeholder engagement activities. Briefly, our mandate is to advance the science of patient-centered measurement methods and beyond. I'm having a hard time seeing that screen. So I got it. Yeah. So to advance the science of patient-centered measurement methods and beyond, and it's important that we're all on the same wavelength for that. So the focus is on methods for doing patient-centered measurement well, basically. And we'll be issuing a call for proposals on advancing those type of methods, doing this type of methodological research. Our guiding principle is also important, as we will be building on existing knowledge in the field of patient-centered measurement. There's a wealth of knowledge, a rich history of knowledge that we want to build upon, and we don't want to be, so to say, reinventing the wheel or things like that. We want to make sure that we really advance the field. So this will be an important consideration in the review of our proposals. Now Lena is going to introduce her.
Okay, so as Rick indicated, our guiding principle was that we wanted to begin with building on existing knowledge. And so we set out to conduct a review of the literature and an environmental scan with the explicit purpose of understanding and observing how patient-centered measurement is defined. And the key findings that arose from that review in the scan were there was a lack of a consistent definition. There was also a tendency to define patient-centered measurement in terms of the purpose of measuring or assessing progress from the patient perspective with the implementation of patient-centered care. What we did not find was a definition that focuses on the process of measurement that is patient-centered, although we did identify important aspects of patient-centered measurement, both in the literature and in the environmental scan. So the schematic in this slide shows those key elements that we did identify. Most importantly, that patient-centered measurement encompasses a cyclical process, and that at its core, it must focus on what is important, what matters to patients and their family caregivers in terms of their experiences with care. So considering their preferences, their needs, and their values. So if you look at the schematic on the left-hand side, you'll see our attempt to be able to visually depict what matters to patients in relation to their preferences and expressed needs and values, as well as their outcomes of care, including their physical and mental health and well-being. So while we continue to work towards a concise, user-friendly definition, what we do know is that methods of patient-centered measurement involve transforming what matters to patients into data. And there you see the second piece of the diagram where we look to asking patients to validate the data and ensure that it accurately identifies and quantifies their perspective. But data, however, is not enough. It needs to be translated or interpreted into information for different stakeholders. And so what we've shown here are various stakeholders: patients, healthcare providers, quality improvement team members, leaders, policymakers, government officials, and researchers, who are then better positioned to act on the information to improve health outcomes, healthcare experiences, and to better make use of resources, all ultimately for the purpose of improving the quality of life for individual patients and society. So the main point here is that we hold patient-centered measurement methods to be inclusive of all aspects of this cyclical process, including methods for determining what matters, methods for obtaining relevant data, methods for translating that data into information, and methods for enhancing the use of the information to ultimately improve health and quality of life. So please stay tuned as we continue to work towards capturing all of this, not only in a picture or graphic, but also in words that will clearly define patient-centered measurement.
What?
Oh, went the wrong way.
No.
There we go.
So our next part, after formulating the working on this definition, we went through an extensive stakeholder engagement activity. And this involved focus groups and workshops and key informant interviews, as is shown on the following slides. So from August 17 to ongoing, we did subject matter expert interviews with people in Canada and international. And from October to December, we did patient focus groups, one in each health authority in British Columbia. And during that same time, we also held stakeholder workshops with healthcare leaders, clinicians, decision makers, any stakeholders, as well as research partners, and again, one within each of the health authorities.
So Rick, can I just add that each of the BC Support Unit methods clusters were asked to develop an inclusive and broad engagement process to guide and inform the identification of methodological priorities that would inform a call for research proposals. So the goal was to create a vision or a map of a future state that would inform the methods that would enhance the science of the work of each cluster. So in our case, Rick has described what we did, but one thing that we do want to mention is that with intentionality, we made the decision to hold the patient focus groups separate from the stakeholder workshops. So I just wanted to add that. Okay, so the next 3 slides show the 3 different components of our engagement activities. So the first one was we brought together, we didn't bring them together. Individually, we reached out to subject matter experts who were selected for their expertise in PROMS and PREMS research in order to solicit their views on both the definition of patient-centered measurement, so what were the key concepts, the key principles, the key ideas, the themes that they felt should resonate in a definition of patient-centered measurement. And then we also asked them about priorities for patient-centered measurement research. And in total, we interviewed 15 subject matter experts, 10 in Canada, as shown here in the different provinces, and 5 internationally. The next piece was our patient focus groups. And so our primary objective with the patient focus group was to explore from the patient perspective what were their priorities for advancing the science of patient-centered measurement in the context of patient-oriented research. And we recognized that this was might be a bit of a challenge, and so the way that we did this was we presented our value chain for patient-centered measurement, and in a conversational mechanism, we asked patients to tell us if and where in the process they would want to be engaged or more engaged. So we conducted 7 focus groups across each of the 7 health authorities. Each was approximately an hour and a half in length, and we worked very, very hard to screen for a broad range of diversity across gender, age, ethnicity, patients and family caregivers, as well as location in the province. And then our stakeholder workshops, the primary goal was to identify patient-centered measurement methods, cluster research priorities from their perspective. But a secondary goal was to bring together people within regions that could choose to work together to collaborate on project proposals. So again, 7 workshops in each of the health authorities. These were up to 2 hours in length, and again, participants were invited or were enticed to participate by the regional support unit leads when we brought together people with PREMS and PROMS expertise across various different, both researchers as well as clinicians, analysts, decision makers, etc. And this slide just shows our attempt to engage with people that represented the diversity across age and ethnicity, 74 patient participants, 97 stakeholder participants. And the key thing I think that we want to emphasize here is that what we're about to present to you today is the outcome of 10.5 hours of transcribed information from the focus groups and 14 hours of transcribed workshop discussions.
So we'll now proceed with presenting the results of all this engagement, which resulted in 11 priority themes for advancing the science of patient-centered measurements in BC. They're based on our analyses of these transcripts from the patient and family caregiver focus groups and the stakeholder workshops, and as well as the subject matter expert interviews. Rather than attempting to reduce or prioritize the themes too much, we took the approach of describing the full diversity of perspectives and priorities that we observed from the data. So we ended up with 11 themes, and each theme will be introduced with a brief description and a visual developed in collaboration with a graphic artist, Avril Orloff, and several patient quotes, which will be followed by a description of topics for the research proposals. We'll only have about 2 minutes per theme though, so we'll only briefly discuss each theme and realize you may not be able to take everything in within the allotted time. However, the webinar and the slides will be available for you to review and reflect on later on. And we also refer to the document describing each theme, which can be downloaded from the Patient-Centered Measurements Cluster webpage. So Lena and I will be taking turns introducing each pair of themes. I'll see you, Lena.
Okay. So, drum roll. The first theme, where's the,
yeah.
There we are. Okay, so the first theme is we would like to call for proposals on measurement that is patient-driven. And this first theme reflects the desire that we heard expressed by patients and clinical and administrators users of patient-centered measurement data to develop measurement methods that reflect a shift away from patient-centered care. And that might seem a little bit shocking to people. But what we heard was that patient-centered care, from the perspective of patients, often feels like patients are being done to by providers. They're in the middle and everyone's around. And so this theme is looking at a shift to instead reflect measurement methods that focus on care that is actually putting the patient in the driver's seat, patient-driven, viewed as patients and families being done with their care providers. And so the research proposals that we would like to invite on patient-centered measurement methods related to the theme of measurement that's patient-driven would promote engagement of patients at every step of the patient-centered measurement process, determining what and how to measure, guiding analysis and reporting of results, as well as executing plans. Patient-centered measurement that's driven by cultural or local communities. So for example, from Indigenous communities or other cultural groups, as well as geographically defined communities, so the difference between rural and urban. Methods that promote shared ownership of patient-centered measurement data and results, so the sharing of results and findings between providers, patients, families, policymakers, and the public. And then lastly, proposals that promote seeing patients as the ultimate owners of their patient-centered measurement data and scores. So where patients are in charge of how their information is used and with whom it would be shared. The second theme is called Giving Voice to Patient, Family Caregiver, and Community Stories. And this theme reflects what we heard about the need for measurement methods that integrate qualitative methods, so things like narrative elicitation protocols, with standardized or more commonly used measurement tools like PREMS and PROMs. So the focus of this theme is on learning from the stories of patients, their family caregivers, cultural groups, or local communities. And here, the research proposals that we would like to invite would promote shifting reliance on purely quantitative methods as the only source of truth to integration of quantitative and qualitative methods. Proposals that move beyond numbers to include stories to increase the interpretability of the results, an examination of agency, how that could be measured. And we're defining agency as the feeling of control over one's actions and their consequences. I'll turn it over to Rick now.
Great.
For the third.
Thank you. So our third theme is ensuring patients feel safe to provide feedback. This theme reflects the importance of feedback from patients about their feelings of fear, stigma, and vulnerability in the power relationships between patients, families, and care providers, both in the collection of patient-centered measurement data and in how the data could be used, possibly against them. Examples include patients' reports of feeling unsafe to provide direct feedback about one's healthcare experiences and outcomes in real time for fear of retaliation, and in rural and remote regions where choice of care providers may be limited. I'll read one of the quotes just as an example. I actually did address my doctor once about something that really bothered me, and they basically almost said, well, you can go find another doctor. Even though I was polite, I was respectful. They know that I would probably never get another GP again in this district, so I get it. But so we'd have to be very careful how we did do any kind of patient interviewing. Most people would be very concerned about doing that. And I'll just anecdotally add that this theme arose in every single one of our patient focus groups. Mm-hmm. Oh, wrong computer. So our research proposals are then invited to address this issue. The issue of focusing on patient-centered measurement methods that promote ensuring that patients feel safe in providing direct feedback on their healthcare experiences and outcomes to care providers. and methods that promote empowerment and education of patients or their advocates to address patient and family and community feelings of vulnerability when providing feedback. And also proposals that promote mechanisms for ensuring and educating healthcare providers about patient-centered measurement data in respectful and culturally safe ways. A fourth theme focuses on measurement tools. So these are the instruments for measuring patient-centered measurement information. And the focus is on measurement tools that are individualized or tailored for diverse patients and populations. This theme reflects the desire to develop and expand patient-centered measurement methods that address the value and purpose of personalized and or tailored tools and surveys. I'll read just one of the quotes. One patient articulated the issue being addressed by this theme as followed. I think society in general has a bias that affects all marginalized groups, that we look at somebody in a wheelchair as the perspective of someone who can walk. We look at gay and lesbian people from the perspective of people who are straight. And we look at folks who have disabilities, be they physical or cognitive, from the perception of someone who is normal. And so this theme reflects a call for proposals to address these types of challenges. Specifically, we're looking for proposals on patient-centered measurement methods that promote patient-centered measurement tools. So these are the instruments. They could be surveys, questionnaires, or what other types of tools you may consider. Tool development that addresses the needs of diverse populations, including diversity in terms of culture, ethnicity, linguistic, regional diversity, such as rural, urban, and so on. We are also calling for proposals that promote development of personalized or individualized or tailored patient-centered measurement tools that focus on what matters to individual patients, families, and cultural or local communities.
Okay, so theme number 5 is around methods for enhancing representation of marginalized, vulnerable, or hard-to-reach populations. And this theme reflects the need that we heard from patients and stakeholders for patient-centered measurement methods, sampling, data collection, analysis, that improve the representation of the experiences and perspectives of what until now have been underrepresented patients, families, and cultural or local communities. And there is a quote that we heard that nicely illustrates this. And this was something that we heard in the patient focus group from the First Nations Health Authority. There is a big problem with First Nations and our desire to be treated equitably, equally in healthcare. There are challenges in why certain people don't want to talk. There's a reason. That may be residential schools, or they may be children who are suffering abuse of some form, sexual, emotional, mental, psychological, spiritual, who's had the voice ripped out of them. Here's a doctor and a nurse, and running around saying, tell me, tell me, tell me, tell me your story. That just triggers. To me, I'm sitting in my chair, and this is going on. It triggers in me a response like, get out of my face. I'm not going to talk to you. I'm scared. I want to run. This is not just a First Nations issue. It's a people. We've all been traumatized, okay? But First Nations, we're talking about British Columbia. We're talking about this being part of First Nations. So the call for proposals that we're inviting that support, that promote this particular theme are those around equity and representativeness of diverse populations. So how to be inclusive of hard-to-reach, marginalized, or vulnerable populations, including and hearing from hard-to-reach populations and those that might hereto have been seen as voiceless. Proposals that promote the role and value of proxies, We'd like to better understand whether family members, peers, and advocates can serve a role in measurement of patients' healthcare experience and outcomes. And we're looking for proposals around co-creating the development of patient-centered measurement methods that address health disparities that exist between marginalized and vulnerable populations and other BC residents. Theme number 6 is measuring across the journey of care. And this theme reflects what we heard around the need for methods of data collection and analysis that allow for patients' experiences and outcomes not to be siloed, to go beyond the location of care and to focus on their whole journey of care being captured through our measurement. And so an example of that is there are huge potholes between the general surgeon, the plastic surgeon, GP. Luckily, I've worked in the health authorities and I felt okay, although I was having some serious problems. But if I wasn't on it all the time, I would still not be taken care of. It was like they weren't talking to each other. It was like, I'm this specialist, I'll look after that. I'm this specialist, I'll look at that. And there was no continuity. So the proposals that we're inviting that relate to this theme would be those that promote understanding of patient experiences and outcomes across the patient episode of care that go beyond the healthcare sector. Understanding of patient experiences and outcomes across transitions in care, so within and between sectors. And proposals that promote understanding of patient experiences and outcomes throughout the entire illness trajectory.
Another theme is theme number 7, focusing on Indigenous methodologies for patient-centered measurement. And so this is about improving patient-centered measurement through the lens of Indigenous methodologies. Here's one of the quotes. One of the things that came to mind firstly was the two-eyed seeing concept, so that if you're working with Indigenous First Nations people, the Western so-called way of doing, and then the traditional way as well, there's that collaboration again. Because the days of coming in with all the knowledge are saying, this is what you need, we're going to save you, colonize our culture, those days are long gone. So a two-eyed seeing approach honors the ways of both knowledge bases. So we're calling for proposals to integrate Indigenous methodologies for patient-centered measurements. In particular, proposals that promote the use of these Indigenous methodologies and that promote community engagement and cultural safety. And proposals that promote research led by Indigenous peoples and other cultural groups. And research that involves co-creation of culturally appropriate tools, as well as mitigating power dynamics between healthcare providers and Indigenous people. Theme number 8, I'm going to pick up the pace a little bit, involves improving use of patient-centered measurement data for research, clinical evaluation, and administrative purposes. This theme focuses on the importance of developing effective knowledge translation strategies for patient-centered measurement, including education and guidelines for patients, healthcare providers, and decision makers, and how to use patient-centered measurement data for different purposes. For example, research, clinical practice decisions of point of care, managerial decision-making, program evaluation, quality improvement, health policy, and health economics. Here's an example quote. So the goal is not reporting it provincially and ticking your box for the hospital versus GP office. It's actually to get the information to the hands of individuals who need that feedback to modify their behavior. So this is very much like a knowledge translation type of theme, and is focused on improving the use of patient-centered measurement methods data. And we're calling them for proposals that promote educating patients, healthcare providers, decision makers on how to act on patient-centered measurement data. well as developing guidelines for selection of patient-centered measurement instruments or tools, methods for scoring and analysis of patient-centered measurement results, and developing guidelines on presenting patient-centered measurement results for different audiences and for different purposes. We also are interested in proposals that develop guidelines on how to interpret and act on patient-centered measurement data. Theme number 9. Where is it?
So theme number 9 is around integration of patient-reported data with clinical and administrative data. And so this theme was in response to the question of whether the contribution of patient-reported scores should carry equivalent, more or less weight than clinical scores or administrative data. And so this theme reflects interest in testing patient-centered measurement methods that integrate or blend, or as this visual shows, have a recipe for combining patient-reported data with clinical and administrative data for healthcare decision-making at the policy level and for shared decision-making between clinicians and patients and family. And so a quote that resonated with us and led to this theme was, I think a lot of this highlights the relationship between a patient's goals and our clinical goals and how they are interpreted when they come together. To me, it's the intersection of where they come together as to how we apply this in practice. And so our call for proposals is for research proposals that promote a combined analysis and use of patient-centered measurement, clinical and administrative data that's available in registries and other healthcare systems for decisions related to clinical practice, so for direct patient care, quality improvement, and/or policy. Theme number 10 was around advancing methods for ensuring that patient-centered measurement accurately reflects what is important to patients. And this theme reflects what we heard from patients and stakeholders about the importance of ensuring trustworthiness of patient-centered measurement, as well as the accuracy of measures for representation of different patient experiences and perspectives. And so an example of a quote is, as in all things, I think it's important to have a listener who will listen and take to heart what is said by the other side. We tend to gather like this and come up with these brilliant ideas that we're going to tackle this and that, but how long is this passion going to last? Where do we want it to take you? I can tell you, we can tell you stories. So that was the patients. We can tell you our stories. And so this theme, we're inviting proposals that promote determining what is important to patients. How do we do measurement that is based on a determination of what is important to patients, that explores translation and cross-cultural validation of patient-centered measurement tools, that explores the timing of data collection. We heard a lot from patients in every single health authority about some of the fear associated with real-time data collection. So this theme is inviting proposals that look at what is the right timing, when to measure, what to measure, how to measure, and how often to measure. And then looking at minimizing error in the analysis of patient-centered measurement data.
Great. And so now we arrive at our final theme. And I'll just reiterate that these themes are actually not presented in priority form. No. So important to keep that in mind. And this final theme, the theme 11, focuses on the development and implementation of innovative technology for patient-centered measurement. So this involves both data collection as well as technology that facilitates analysis, reporting, and use of patient-centered measurement data. There's several quotes. I'll just read one of them by means of example. Everyone talks about social media, but not everybody is comfortable with social media. So you got to incorporate a whole bunch of different ways of getting at it. Could we please remember that probably 10 to 14% of the population overall does not have one single piece of digital equipment, no smartphone, no computer, no laptop, no tablet, or we're going to ignore 10 to 14%. That's a lot of people that we might with if we don't have a print component to a questionnaire. So this is an example of how to address the challenges surrounding use of innovative technology. And there's so many more quotes that could be provided for this theme, and that's just one example. So we're calling for proposals on patient-centered measurement methods that promote the use of patient health records, portals, and electronic medical records for patient-centered measurement data collection, and the use of patient-centered measurement data, and the use of this technology as well for individualized or tailored measurements. This may include, for example, computerized or tailored adaptive testing technologies, as well as artificial intelligence for analysis of both numerical data and textual data. So this concludes our review of the 11 themes based on our analysis of a fairly extensive province-wide engagement of stakeholders and patients and family caregivers. And we're now looking for proposals that can address one or more of these themes. So we're at the stage of inviting proposals for research on methods of patient-centered measurement that address these priority themes. Proposals will be accepted until May 2019 or until all funds have been allocated. And the proposals could be narrow in focus on only one of the themes, or they can cross-cut two or more themes. To accommodate differences in scope, we have decided to offer scalable funding opportunity for proposals, smaller scale proposals up to, say, $50,000, for medium proposals between $50,000 and $100,000, and for larger proposals between $100,000 and $200,000. And for the larger proposals, we do expect that they would cover multiple themes and engage broader communities of researchers, stakeholders, and patients from different jurisdictions and communities across BC. We realize that there may be many people interested in being part of a research team, but who do not necessarily want to take the role of writing a proposal. And so to accommodate this, we have first a call for an indication of interest from people who are interested in becoming part of a research team, as well as people who are interested in writing and leading research projects, writing proposals and leading research projects. For those who are interested, we ask that you just indicate your interest in one or more of the themes. You may also put forward a research idea. For those who want to lead a research project, we ask that you prepare a paragraph, a one-pager, on the project that you are envisioning. Please follow the instructions on the PCM cluster webpage. We will then collate the results and invite full proposals based on your input. For those leading a research proposal, we may ask you to consider involving others who have indicated an interest in the area that you are proposing to research. We encourage you to prepare and submit your proposals as soon as possible. And each proposal will then undergo an internal review by the Methods Cluster Scientific Council, to which you may be asked to clarify or strengthen particular aspects of the proposal. And once the Council approves to proceed, each proposal will then also subsequently be reviewed by subject matter experts who may come up with additional recommendations to further enhance and improve the proposal. Once the final proposal is approved, you'll then have until March 28, 2021 to complete your proposal research and your proposed research and submit a final report. And we'll also be asking for interim reports to be submitted every 6 months. So the full time span is pretty much from today to 2 years, plus a month. And so it will be beneficial to get the proposals in sooner, because the sooner you start, the more time you will have to complete your research. So this concludes our presentation of our stakeholder engagement activities early on, where we kind of set the scope of what we mean by patient-centered measurement, as Lena introduced, as well as our activities for engaging the different types of stakeholder groups and patient and family caregiver communities, as well as our review of the priority themes and our call for proposals. And we now like to leave the remaining time for questions. We have about 15 minutes remaining. There we go. For questions and answers. And again, if you feel that your question wasn't answered or you didn't have enough time to ask us, please email us the questions, and we will be posting a questions and answers document based on all of this after this webinar as well. So we have about 15 minutes remaining. And
yes, so in order to support engagement in the questions, if you notice beside your name, there's a little icon for a hand. So if you want to be able to speak your question, just click that, and I'll be scrolling through the names. But we have a couple questions already in the chat, so let's start with those, and anyone else can also put it in the chat to everyone. I'll leave it to you guys to read that out if you want.
Okay. Yep. So one question is, are you looking for proposals that are broad and cross-disciplinary, or projects that are focused on development of patient-reported outcome measures for a specific condition? That's a great question, so thank you for that. There's two questions here. So I think I briefly explained that there is a range of scope in which proposals could be accommodated. But in general, the focus is on engagement. So we do want to engage different types of groups of people that are relevant to the proposed research, be it cross-disciplinary or be it people in different roles, and certainly, of course, engaging patients and or family caregivers. In terms of the focus on developing measures, well, probably the main thing is there may be methodological research that could be done on how to develop measures, for instance, in relation to one of the themes. But we wouldn't really be looking for proposals for developing any particular measure. There are many, many measures out there, and so your proposal could maybe involve that component, but it shouldn't be the main focus, because the main focus is on measurement methods and how to do patient-centered measurement well. Do you want to add to that, Lena?
Yeah, I guess I would ask a question of you, Rick, in that if someone was looking at developing a patient-reported outcome measure as an exemplar
exactly.
of one of our themes, that could be okay, right?
Exactly. So as an exemplar, it's okay. But it shouldn't be the primary focus of your proposal.
Yeah, and recognizing that there's only 2 years to do the work.
Yeah.
So here's the next one from Karen.
Just to clarify, are patient partners involved in internal and external review process, and are reviewers from all health authorities, geographical areas, if possible? Well, I think I'll come back to you with the details on that, because we'll be following the same process as has been used for all the other methods clusters. And so we have reviewers that are not limited to BC per se. They could be national or international that may be reviewing your proposal. But the initial stage is actually that the proposal gets reviewed by the Methods Cluster Scientific Council, which is the people, the leaders and the advisors involved in the methods, in all of the methods clusters.
And I wonder, Rick, if I could just add to that, that we're really encouraging patients to participate on these research teams, and that's why we worked so hard for broad engagement and invited the people who participated to attend today's webinar, and that we're also really keen on cross-geographical area proposals. So that's just another way of engaging people across all the different health authorities and patients, in addition to the process of review of the proposals.
Yeah. Is that all the questions?
Oh, so what's this? Was there any discussion or comments in any of the stakeholder pages? having any other language.
So everybody,
Yeah.
because people can't see this, right?
They can see it, but I think it's good.
Okay.
It's good to read it out. Yeah.
So was there any discussion or comments in any of the stakeholder or patient engagement groups about having other languages besides English be used, and as English-only model might be alienating the non-English speaking population? Yes, definitely. And this pertains to the theme, I think it was theme 4, on development of measurement tools that are individualized or tailored for diverse patients and populations. And those tools could indeed also involve methods for incorporating other languages in patient-centered measurement methods. It's a very important point. Thank you for raising that.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
If we don't have any other questions, would it be possible to ask people to either type in their chat boxes or unmute their mics and just give us feedback to what they've heard?
Yeah.
So, you know, do these themes resonate with them? Are they a surprise to them? Do they think that there's something missing? I just think that would be helpful for us as well.
Yeah, so if you're not familiar, if you want to unmute your mics, you can, it's a little red icon beside your name again, so you can just unclick that.
Or type in the chat box.
Yeah, or type in the chat box.
Maybe while we'll wait, I think there are some aspects of the process that I, in any case, was a little bit surprised about. We know, for instance, about anxieties of people sharing about their healthcare experiences and health outcomes, but I hadn't really considered that being a methodological theme. And so that really arose out of our patient-centered measurement methods focus groups with the patients and family caregivers as a theme that, if anything, this needs to be addressed from their point of view.
Mm-hmm. Do I take submit a proposal will we begin? Oh, that's interesting.
The comment reads, if we submit a proposal for interest on March 1st and we are not invited to submit a full proposal, will we give feedback or so we can improve our understanding of patient-centered measurement methods? As long as the proposal is on target, the main reason for so this is not about screening proposals out of that initial stage, but it's more recognizing that there may be people with similar interests coming together. And so we want to use that in that initial stage to provide that opportunity. So it's not that you, as long as you're on topic with one of the themes, of course, and it seems like an important project that addresses those priorities. It's not the intent of stage 1 indication of interest to screen out proposals. So I hope that clarifies.
Mm-hmm.
So is the expression of interest just as simple as saying, I am interested in, or is the short proposal required? So if you go to the patient-centered measurement methods cluster web page, there are some instructions there. And there's basically 2 things you can do. One is you may be just wanting to be part of a team that does this, but you don't want to take a leading role. So in that case, it is indeed as simple as simply saying that you're interested in and indicating what area, what particular themes you're interested in. And you may drop a line as to if you have an idea for a project. But for those who actually want to lead a project and putting a project forward, we ask that you write a short proposal. And there's a 1-page document that you can download and just fill in the empty spaces in that document to write that 1-pager. And again, the intent here is actually not so much for screening purposes, but more for purposes of bringing people together.
Well, and so I would just add, Paul, in response to your question, that you can consider this a patient-centered measurement methods cluster's dating service. It's kind of like a dating app. You express interest, we'll match you up to other people who have a similar interest, because together you're stronger, right?
Yeah. Any other comments or questions? So here is a comment. I noticed that theme 9 identified integration of patient-reported data with clinical and administrative data. Most evaluation we conduct use this metrics already. It's not very clear to me what outcomes
Scroll down.
You are hoping for in this particular theme, as this is already happening whenever you use the triple aim approach. Yes, but there is also significant areas for improvement in the integration of different types of data. For instance, when we combine patient-centered measurement data with administrative data in registries, there's usually like patient registries, for instance, so we have disease-specific registries, for instance, or the condition-specific registries, or other types of registries. There are often many data challenges, like how do we match up the different forms of data to actually arrive at an informative analysis that informs these different types of purposes of patient-centered measurement. And there's also data analytical challenges, especially with integration of different forms of data. When there is missing data, there's often a lot of missing data in registries, data that needs to be coded in different ways and then matched up with patient-centered measurement information. So there is quite a few unanswered questions there that I think could be answered. But we certainly do want to adhere to our guiding principle, which is to build on existing knowledge. So we're not asking, so we really do want to build on like things that you have been doing already, and the focus is on how can we do this better.
And if I could just add to that, Rick, Shay, what we heard from patients was that they don't view that their self-reports, their patient-reported experience or outcome information is given equal weight to the clinical and administrative data. So while perhaps what's happening in your health authority in terms of how you do your evaluation is an exemplar of how it should be done, we would like to learn more about how to do that well and how to integrate the patient voice as an equal component to other data that's available in our healthcare system. So from the perspective of patients, we heard that they don't feel that their voice is equally heard. And from the perspective of clinicians especially, what we heard was they don't know how to do it. And because this methods cluster is about improving the methods of patient-centered measurement, that's where we came up with this theme, looking at how could we entertain proposals that would actually do research on how to do this integration better. Right?
Yeah, thank you. There's a question about what information to include in the accrued budget. I think you're referring to the budget here for the expression of interest. You will be given detailed budget guidelines for the full proposal. So, but at the expression of interest stage, we just, if you're actually wanting to lead a project, we want to have an indication of the scope of budget that you're envisioning. So just kind of crude categories, approximately this much I foresee for staffing, for instance, and approximately this much for operational costs in terms of maybe data collection or something like that, just so that we have a bit of a sense and able to scope out the proposal. There is another, where are we?
Okay, I'm just going to go down.
Yeah, from a patient perspective, being asked to submit a proposal outline in 4 days is quite an intimidating prospect from a general person trying to provide input as a volunteer. And yes, thank you for that comment. Now, the call did go out a couple of weeks ago, but it is indeed a fairly expedited timeline. So, I mean, if you we're always open. So if you feel that you have an idea and need more time, we'll work with you. So please just send us your idea and we'll work together in figuring something out. What will be done in 2 years with all the information from the research report sent in? Well, this is part of the same process will be followed as for all the BC support unit methods clusters. And so research reports, and we will be following the Canadian Institutes for Health Research guidelines. And so they require that all research results are made publicly available. And so we'll be following that principle. The exact mechanism for that to be done is not unique to this clusters. So just keep checking the web page, and that will be communicated. Great. These are fantastic questions, and I was actually mostly looking forward to the question and answer period. So thanks very much for asking those questions. I do realize that you probably have many more questions. We have a few minutes remaining, but you can always email us. Heather, who's sitting beside me here, is the coordinator for the research, this part of the support unit working with the methods cluster, and we'll be collating all your questions for us. So please direct them to Heather, and if there's a discussion needed, she'll be putting you in touch with me or Lena, and we'll have a discussion back and forth to make sure your questions are answered.
Correct.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, maybe we should just wrap up then.
Yeah.
Great.
So just as a reminder, I think we're going to wrap this session up, and I just wanted to say a huge thank you to both Rick and Lena for being here and doing an excellent presentation. This presentation has been recorded. It's available. I'll be posting it on our website as well as the slides. Is there another question?
There's another slide.
Ah.
But you could finish your story.
That's it. So
Okay.
thanks for everyone for joining.
Yeah, great.
Well,
thank you. I wanted to conclude with a special thanks to everyone who supported this fairly substantial undertaking of stakeholder engagement across British Columbia. A special thanks to Lena and her group in working with me to make this happen. It wouldn't have been possible without your support, Lena. So really thankful for that. I think we ended up with a very rich outcome. And also for Chung Liu at the Office of Patient-Centered Measurement, as well as Donna Tavreshi and Banjo, who helped us with the analyses. So you saw that there was a lot of transcripts to work through, so we had an analysis team. And also each of the regional support units and the representatives of each of the regional support units who helped us with recruiting people for the focus groups and the stakeholder workshops, as well as the representatives of each of the health authorities who helped us with this process as well, and helped us also with logistics of making sites available for these meetings as we traveled out to each of these locations. So it was a large undertaking, and I hope I haven't missed anybody in the special thanks for supporting this effort. Thank you.
Thank you.